This document was discovered in an unmarked collection of Cold War ideological papers. Its origin is unclear. Its tone is unmistakable. What follows is the full, unedited body of an internal Marxist-Leninist report produced somewhere within the international anti-revisionist movement in the late 1960s. It examines radical groups inside the United States, the struggle against modern revisionism, the role of China, the crisis inside the Soviet Union, and the global confrontation between imperialism and revolution. It was never signed, never stamped, never claimed. And now, the document begins.
On the Progressive Labor Party of the United States, and on the content of several issues of its publication, Progressive Labor. The group Progressive Labor was formed in New York, USA, in 1961. It published a bi-monthly journal of the same name. In early 1965, the Progressive Labor Party, PLP, of the United States was established. It publishes the magazine Progressive Labor and the theoretical bi-monthly Challenge, with a circulation of 200,000 copies. Milton Rosen, leader of the original Progressive Labor Group, became chairman of the party. The vice chairman is the black activist William Epton. Rosen is around 40 years old. Epton is 34. Our party has no formal relations with the PLP. Members of this organization have visited our permanent mission in New York several times, as well as our embassies in Beijing and Havana. The PLP has sent us several issues of Progressive Labor, but not the theoretical journal Challenge. Our press has occasionally published reports about the party's activities, usually taken from the Xinhua agency. Chinese comrades maintain regular contact with the PLP, and according to Homer Chesnan, publisher of the bulletin Hammer and Steel, a representative of this party has been living in Beijing for some time. Homer Chesnan, as well as the POC, the Preparatory Committee for Building a Marxist-Leninist Party in the U.S., speak harshly about the PLP leadership. One of Chesnan's disagreements with the Chinese comrades is exactly the positive attention Chinese media give to PLP activities. In contrast, Jack Schulman, former secretary of William Foster, chairman of the Communist Party USA until 1960, speaks favorably of the PLP. The current leaders of the PLP, while still members of the Communist Party USA, especially after the 22nd Congress of the CPSU, accused their leadership of being non-revolutionary and revisionist. They demanded the strengthening of party work and expansion into sectors where meaningful work was possible: trade unions, the black movement, student movements, etc. The CPUSA leadership accused them of dogmatism and unprincipled sectarianism, factionalism, anti-party behavior, and inability to understand the new era, the new balance of forces, and the class content of peaceful coexistence. These expelled or self-excluded communists formed their own group, publishing a monthly bulletin titled Progressive Labor and focusing primarily on trade union work. Their program calls for violent revolutionary struggle, the destruction of the state apparatus of the ruling class in the U.S., and its replacement with the power of the workers and their allies. They argue that only a socialist state can resolve America's pressing problems: unemployment, workplace conditions, living standards, education, culture, racism, colonial oppression, disarmament, and peace. As its ranks and activity expanded, this group formed the Progressive Labor Party. The PLP works with the working masses but, according to Chinese comrades, focuses more on students and black youth, leading organizations such as the Black Student Movement, and participating in anti-war mobilizations supporting the Vietnamese people. About 30% of the party is under 30 years old, and roughly 30% are black. According to Homer Chesnan, the party has around 150 members, most in New York. American press estimates 1,200 members in 12 states. Chesnan writes that the current PLP leadership did not support him and his comrades in 1960 when they opposed the CPUSA's revisionist line. According to him, Milton Rosen refused to unite with anti-revisionist forces even after Rosen himself was expelled from the CPUSA. Rosen, Chesnan claims, stated that he intended to build an organization aligned with neither Khrushchev nor Mao Zedong. In the article Where We Stand, Rosen described President Kennedy as an imperialist, but a liberal one. Rosen opposed brother against brother warfare within the party. Homer Chesnin on progressive labor. Chesnin claims PLP members behave like provocateurs and adventurists, particularly during demonstrations involving black communities. He says their views mirror those of revisionist parties, that blacks should receive democratic rights and freedoms, but not self-determination. They support pacifist actions and insist that the entire American people oppose the war, which, according to Chesnin, lowers vigilance and disarms revolutionary consciousness. He accuses progressive labor of being created by the PUSA and suggests its leaders may have ties to government agencies. Their pacifism, he argues, serves U.S. imperialism directly. Chesnin claims that Trotskyists have penetrated the PLP. Rosen, who wrote on the cloak of Stalin's cult, allegedly worked with Trotskyists to organize youth trips to Cuba. Rosen shares positions with American Trotskyists who spread State Department propaganda about Hungary and Stalin while supporting Tito. Chesnin argues PLP leaders are Browderites, masking their hostility towards Stalin, Mao, and other revolutionary leaders beneath superficial praise. The POC on progressive labor. The POC writes that the PLP represents a crisis of revisionists and Trotskyists. Tell Rosen and Scheer, they write, to expose the role of Trotskyists globally and domestically, and watch what happens. They cannot expose themselves. Tell them to expose American revisionists, and they respond with anti-Soviet rhetoric. How can they expose the very force that created them? Jack Schulman, despite recognizing the group's weaknesses, compromises with revisionists, softness toward Trotskyists, etc., speaks sympathetically. He considers PLP the largest and most active Marxist, Leninist grouping in the U.S., composed mainly of young activists who are correcting earlier mistakes. Contrary to Chesnin, Schulman insists there are no Trotskyists inside PLP. Chinese comrades view the PLP favorably. They say the leadership is young, energetic, and active with the masses, especially black communities, and that PLP-led demonstrations have intensified U.S. protests against the Vietnam War. Chinese media give the party broad coverage. PLP leaders frequently visit the People's Republic of China. 2 PLP representatives in Beijing, 1965, requested that their comrade in New York meet with our mission to deliver a letter, and asked that 4 PLP members be allowed to travel from China to Europe via our country for security reasons. Their request was ultimately denied after evaluation. In August of this year, Gordon Jeffries, a PLP member attending the OLAS conference in Havana, visited our mission, conveying warm greetings from the PLP National Committee. He expressed agreement with our party's positions and admiration for its leadership. He said the PLP wanted to meet our mission in New York, but faced difficulties. He complained they could not secure a meeting with our representative at the UN the previous year. He requested that our leadership instruct the mission to receive PLP representatives. He mentioned previous invitations for PLP to visit our country and said they would now gladly send a delegate to study our successes. They publish many of our ideological articles, including our analysis of Indonesia, which they highly valued. Gordon said the party has begun preparing to arm its members. According to him, the U.S. government fears revolutionary struggle and uses deceptive methods to mislead the masses. He condemned the OLAS conference as anti-Marxist and purely propagandistic. He sharply criticized the Cuban delegation's stance. Chinese comrades consider Gordon the only true Marxist, Leninist present at OLAS. The magazine Progressive Labor writes extensively on PLP activity, its successes, weaknesses, work among students, workers, and black communities, its views on China, the anti-imperialist struggle, Stalin, and the causes of revisionism in the Soviet Union. 1. On PLP. According to the magazine, the party emphasizes close ties with the masses. Its mission is to learn from the people and provide revolutionary methods and forms of struggle. The party focuses especially on black communities. Over the past 2 years, PLP has concentrated on housing, rent, and economic issues that concern the majority. We must move slowly, they write, taking several preliminary reformist steps before we can reach a revolutionary stage. Blackness, oppression, and potential do not matter in themselves unless guided by correct revolutionary ideology and proper organizational forms. The ruling class is preparing armed terror against black communities. Their conditions are worsening. The ruling class hopes to use white workers in this racial conflict to weaken the working class. Speaking about internal weaknesses, they write, "We have begun overcoming our internal weaknesses, our sectarianism, which isolated us from many people and organizations in the struggle against war, poverty, high prices, and wage freezes. We did not stress a united front sufficiently in our early stages. Now we are joining with many groups simultaneously, while maintaining our principles and expanding our propaganda for socialist revolution. Sectarianism remains a problem, but not primarily a political one. We have largely corrected our line, reflected in our growing influence in the anti-imperialist uprising. Arrests and attacks have forced each member to reconsider their commitment. Victory will not be easy. Those who wish to leave have left. We were too liberal in accepting new members, quantity over quality. We now understand this error. We are growing in both quality and numbers in our work, membership, and study of Marxism, Leninism. Last year's cadre school was a major step forward. The main obstacle to our progress is the influence of bourgeois society within our ranks. Our decisive struggle is between revolutionary and bourgeois ideology, especially between revolutionary morality and petty bourgeois individualism, between full dedication to the working class and self-interest, which is the moral foundation of modern revisionism. To build a communist party, we must live among the people and learn from them. Daily struggle is the basis of study. Study without political work is like a ladle without food. Concrete study has two aims: to understand ourselves, our class, our allies, and our internal contradictions, and to understand the enemy and its contradictions. In a relatively peaceful period like the present, we must study the laws of war and class struggle, exploiting the enemy's contradictions. Many believed revolution in the U.S. was hopeless. Our party has never doubted victory. But we cannot win alone. We must unite with potential allies among the working class, black and white, students and intellectuals, small farmers and small proprietors, the overwhelming majority of the people. This is our goal and a necessary condition for revolution. It requires a united front, united actions, and alliances, temporary or long-term. We must use many organizational forms for mass action. We must distinguish between principal and secondary enemies. But we will never abandon our communist position, ideological leadership of the revolutionary movement. To elevate political struggle nationwide, the leadership of workers must shift from pro-imperialists to anti-imperialists. This shift is decisive for the entire anti-imperialist movement. The key is revolutionary consciousness in the working class, achieved through alliances and by bringing communists into the factories. This is the task of the next period. To build a genuine united front, we must wage constant struggle against revisionism. The ruling class uses opportunists to mislead the movement. Millions of workers will deepen class struggle. Class consciousness will rise. Economic battles will transform into anti-imperialist battles. Without organizing black masses around a clear program of self-determination, alliances with other classes will remain partial and temporary. The foundation of a lasting alliance is a program and organization aimed at taking power. Essential to this development are black Marxist, Leninist forces capable of transforming national struggle into class struggle. 2. On China and Stalin. The magazine writes, Stalin was the leader of the greatest working-class victory in human history. Today, for us, Stalin means build communism, fight imperialism, defeat modern revisionism. Jimmy Higgins, the center of opportunism within the working-class movement for decades, is described by Stalin as the opinion of the majority of the workers who argue that we must fight imperialism, but without breaking the law. We must fight it, but slowly. We must fight it, but not too much. Imperialists turn communists into Jimmy Higginses by brainwashing them with fear. Fear of power, fear of their enemies, fear of their own responsibilities. Anyone who wishes to improve society without sacrificing personal interests cannot be a communist. Imperialism is using atomic blackmail to create fear. American, English, and Soviet imperialists seek allies. They must isolate true revolutionaries. But to isolate true communists, they must first disarm them ideologically. Many U.S. communists, even those who followed Marx and Lenin for decades, believed that the American people were the first to use the atomic bomb in Hiroshima and that they should not be the ones to drop another bomb. These are serious illusions. The American people had nothing to do with the decision to bomb Hiroshima. The employing class decided, the few who control political and military power. They would do it again without hesitation. These communists ignore the fundamental Marxist-Leninist formula. Who rules whom? On Mao Zedong. The magazine writes extensively on Mao, who has expanded Marxism-Leninism, explaining the relationship between people and leaders, the need for leaders to become part of the people, the role of regional leadership, the transitional character of socialism, the root causes of revisionism. He demonstrated how advanced ideology requires practical experience, how new contradictions arise in socialist society, how to build revolutionary consciousness within the working class, how imperialists must be confronted through alliances, how ideology must guide the development of practical consciousness. Our party strongly supports the People's Republic of China, Mao Zedong, the Chinese Communist Party, and all socialist countries that oppose imperialism and modern revisionism. 3. On the causes of revisionism in the Soviet Union. According to Progressive Labor, the analysis is divided into political, ideological, and economic roots. Political causes. The existence of two lines within the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, CPSU, resulted in a struggle that ended with Khrushchev's line dominating. The magazine states, Stalin's errors begin with his stance that imperialism is the main cause of war. This error led him to seek temporary agreements with imperialists to gain time for building socialism in the USSR. Even repeating the phrase, peace is the desire of all peoples, facilitated the enemy's ideological penetration. Talk of peace prevailing over war was exploited by imperialists to justify coexistence with the USSR and hinder the struggle against them. The magazine claims the CPSU still uses Stalin's arguments to avoid exposing revisionists themselves. Stalin's second error, the magazine says, was his belief that revolutionary strategy should be the same worldwide, regardless of different class structures, levels of development, or contradictions. In practice, most communist parties failed, providing the ground for modern revisionism. Stalin's greatest error was his rigid interpretation of class struggle, which assumed the enemy was a tightly organized class. But the enemy increasingly used psychological tools, anti-Sovietism, fear, manipulation, capitalist ideology, to penetrate the masses. Without ideological struggle, the fight against a decentralized enemy is impossible. Before Stalin's death, bourgeois states succeeded in influencing the party and government through their partners in the USSR. Meanwhile, revolutionaries abroad became dependent on the USSR's mistakes. 2. Ideological causes. Stalinian ideology created conditions that enabled the triumph of revisionists in the CPSU. In the struggle between two lines, Stalin belittled the opposing line, idealized party unity above all, imposed the formula that unity must be preserved at any cost. Instead of developing new representatives of revolutionary ideology during the struggle, Stalin treated the party as one homogeneous element, accepted opportunists without ideological struggle, explained complex contradictions in oversimplified ways, confused the party's class composition with its ideological consolidation, treated the problem as primarily requiring repression rather than ideological struggle. Since capitalists increasingly influenced the working class ideologically, with racism as a major tool in the U.S., an ideological line is essential. Without it, the party becomes vulnerable. The main lesson we learn from the Soviet Union is that revisionism must be fought relentlessly, and that revolutionary ideology must be constantly clarified, developed, and defended. 3. Economic causes. The magazine claims that capitalist elements were not eliminated in the USSR. Nationalism and the worship of Soviet patriotism created social inequality, undermined internationalism, and revived bourgeois tendencies. The revisionists also misinterpreted the concepts of the new bourgeoisie and the labor aristocracy. They blurred class distinctions, arguing that working-class privileges are simply social rights. They claimed industrialization had ended class struggle. Contradictions had diminished. The state had become the state of the whole people. The party had become the party of the whole people. The magazine criticizes these as foundations for modern revisionism. 4. On imperialism and revolution, on the U.S. struggle and international strategy. The crucial issue for American revolutionaries is self-determination for Black people. The magazine writes, without a strategic policy enabling the Black nation to gain and defend power, revolutionary struggle in the U.S. is impossible. Revolutionaries must wage national struggle for self-determination, wage class struggle to overthrow imperialism, build alliances among all revolutionary forces, understand that national struggle is part of class struggle. Events in the U.S. demonstrate the ruling class uses racism to divide workers. Economic oppression and national oppression reinforce each other. Black workers can become a vanguard force for revolution. To achieve unity, limited alliances between increasingly radical middle classes and the working class are possible, but the main problem is many revolutionaries believe the American working class opposes revolution. PLP argues that the working class will lead the revolution. Those who deny this are reactionaries. The American bourgeoisie fears the rise of revolutionary consciousness. It sows illusions such as pacifism, the idea that reforms can solve oppression, the belief that racism is simply a moral issue rather than a class issue, unity based on Democratic Party politics. PLP writes, the basic aspiration of the Black nation for many years to come will be self-determination. This movement will grow or stagnate depending on the collapse or preservation of American imperialism. Key tasks: establish a political ideology for Black liberation. Unite Black struggle with working class struggle. Expose revisionism. Develop nationwide anti-imperialist movements. Intensify class struggle until it becomes national struggle. Deploy large numbers of revolutionary cadres in factories. 5. On the international class contradiction. The magazine argues that the ruling classes in Africa, Asia, and Latin America are uniting to redistribute the wealth of the working masses. But the true owners of this wealth, the workers, are excluded. According to the magazine, Marxism, Leninism has shown the law of uneven development, the spontaneity of anti-colonial movements, the need for organized leadership, the necessity for unity among revolutionary movements. The PLP states, to elevate the struggle politically across the country, leadership must shift from pro-imperialist to anti-imperialist forces. The key contradiction today is between the imperialist camp, the anti-imperialist, revolutionary camp. This includes workers, peasants, revolutionary intellectuals, oppressed nations. The imperialists seek to isolate revolutionary forces and exploit contradictions among progressive movements. The article claims, only revolutionary ideology can unite oppressed peoples, and only Marxism, Leninism can guide them to victory. 6. More on the roots of Soviet revisionism. The magazine cites several historical factors. According to the author, until 1929, capitalism in the USSR was allowed to flourish during the growth of class differentiation. After land distribution and the revolution, many peasants became middle peasants. Middle peasants were influenced by private ownership, and this influenced society as a whole. Another root is the general population. Citing Marx, the article says that in a revolutionary society emerging from one based on privilege, like pre-revolutionary Russia, all individuals inherit varying degrees of individualistic tendencies. Children were influenced by social institutions, especially schools and families. Schools employed teachers with petty bourgeois views. Families could not immediately transform their orientation from individual child-rearing to collective, social upbringing. The Soviet government took reasonable measures to eliminate religion until World War II. But during the war, when the regime's existence was threatened, it made concessions to religious believers to ensure loyalty. These concessions strengthened petty bourgeois sentiment during and after the war. The article states that the government also carried out nationalist propaganda using slogans like Mother Russia, implying that any Russian regime was better than a German one. The regime granted special privileges to military officers, separating them from ordinary people. By the mid-1930s, few technical specialists or administrators were party members. It was clear to party members that many such people held hostile attitudes toward the regime. Over time, the influence of technical and administrative personnel grew within the party. After 1929, more and more technical and managerial staff joined. According to the article, the fascist occupation not only spread fascist ideology, but also drastically reduced the portion of the population, especially party members, who were almost entirely socialist. During the war, the Soviets deployed division after division composed largely of Komsomol youth, the most dedicated and self-sacrificing generation, most of whom were killed. The result, the article says, was the weakening of the revolutionary, non-individualist, proletarian core of the Communist Party. This contributed to strengthening the petty bourgeois wing. The article adds the same thing happened in socialist European countries. The third section of the article highlights another factor, allowing party members to receive higher wages than some categories of workers. The author expresses doubts about the validity of this decision, but acknowledges it occurred. Following Marx's advice in Critique of the Gotha Program, the Soviets provided material incentives to encourage economic growth. The author criticizes this as non-socialist. If Stalinists can be blamed for a fundamental error, this is it. After describing several aspects of the petty bourgeois mentality that influenced the rise of a petty bourgeois wing in the CPSU, the author adds, there is a significant danger that the triumph of this petty bourgeois element is inevitable. This is the essential lesson of the Soviet tragedy. China is taking preventive measures to avoid the Soviet path. The Chinese army, following the Soviet example, introduced differential privileges in its ranks, which have recently been abolished. The article concludes that pessimism toward the USSR is unnecessary because the vast majority of the Soviet people remain socialist. 7. Against American imperialism. The magazine Progressive Labor writes extensively against American imperialist aggression in Vietnam. It states that U.S. imperialism must be defeated. According to the magazine, there are two possible ways the U.S. can be forced out of Vietnam. It will be expelled by the powerful military actions of the Vietnamese people, combined with global and domestic pressure. Or, assisted by the Soviets, the U.S. will remain in Vietnam, militarily, politically, and economically, with the fighting halted, giving it the opportunity to pursue long-term imperialist goals. The magazine concludes, the first option is more likely. Since the victory of the Chinese people and the Chinese Communist Party in 1949, the central global conflict has shifted to Asia. This process accelerated due to the non-revolutionary and non-anti-imperialist stance of the Soviet Union. The full alignment of revisionist policy with that of the imperialists enabled the United States to shift its offensive focus from Europe to Asia and intensify its war against Vietnam. The magazine compares Khrushchev's policy to that of Hitler. It emphasizes that U.S. policy in Vietnam contradicts the desires of the American people, and that Black Americans, like the Vietnamese people, share a common enemy, American imperialism. Our opinion. Some of Homer Chesnin's criticisms of progressive labor are unfounded. For example, Chesnin claims that PLP holds the same position as the revisionist Communist Party USA on the black question, that African Americans should receive democratic rights, but not self-determination. But progressive labor explicitly writes, without organizing the black masses around a clear program of self-determination, any alliance with other classes will remain partial and temporary. Chesnin also claims that PLP leaders are Browderites and have sympathy for Tito. But PLP's magazine openly attacks Browderism and Titoism. Regarding his claim that Trotskyists have infiltrated PLP, this cannot be ruled out. But the PLP itself has made self-criticism, admitting it previously prioritized quantity over quality in membership. The PLP tends to assume a leading role in the international Marxist-Leninist movement, engaging in tasks such as analyzing the causes of revisionism in the Soviet Union or positioning Stalin beneath Mao in ideological hierarchy. These materials contain many debatable, unconvincing, and inaccurate points. PLP participation at the OLAS conference in Havana also reflects this tendency toward leadership ambition. The leading role of the PLP in relation to its publication Progressive Labor is unclear. Each issue includes the statement that the articles do not necessarily represent the views of the editorial staff or of the PLP. In the preface to a book published by the PLP about international Marxist, Leninist parties and groups, they state they welcome critical comments. Our view is that, as planned earlier, 2 representatives of the PLP should be invited for discussions and mutual acquaintance to visit during early 1968 or another convenient time. This document carried no origin, no insignia, no national seal, only ideology and warnings. It revealed the fractures inside the American left, the battles between communists, revisionists, and Trotskyists, the international struggle between Beijing, Moscow, and Washington, and the hidden competition within the world revolutionary movement itself. Its tone is uncompromising, its analysis unfiltered, its purpose unknown. But now, after decades in silence, its words resurface, another forgotten fragment of the Cold War, another internal struggle inside the global left, another secret uncovered by the Black Folder.